to the Moonshade.
Dragging us back to the realms.
Yeah.
Okay, Curry, we got some questions, Curry.
Go over there, everybody. Wave a fest hall.
Yeah.
So the sages, the rest of the guys that are on the show, commonly enough, they've thrown in some questions for us to put into the mix here. This one's from Eric Boyd. This question is: the furbolgs of the Moonshade novels do not match the descriptions of the furbolgs from the game books from that era. Is there another type of giant, such as Fomorians, that you had in mind that were called furbolgs by the inhabitants of the Moonshades?
I don't think so. I'm I forgot that they were actually there was a furbolg giant in the game. So I really don't know why the ones in the book don't match the ones from the game, or what the differences were. I thought they were pretty darn similar. But I could be wrong.
Well, I'll have to get back with Eric and see which discrepancies he's addressing there.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm sure he'll see this and he'll be
Maybe
quick
Ed
to write
knows.
something up really quick with site references and everything.
The
He's good like that.
Fomorians of mythology, of Celtic mythology, are gross and misshapen. They find our world poisonous to them. So they're like growing warts and they're changing their shape and they look truly monstrous. And they poison the very ground they walk on, sort of thing.
Okay.
And the problem that poses for TSR with its code of conduct is the things that gamers put into every edition, then get written right out by the company and then put back in again, is insanity and diseases and poisons.
Okay.
The ones that the company rejiggers just because every designer wants to have a crack at it and do it properly this time is psionics. But every single edition of the game has a go at those. And I think they were a little reluctant to portray Fomorians as they are in mythology because of that reason. It's sort of like the design problem that a comic book writer writing the DC character Infectious Lass from the Legion of Alternate Superheroes. I mean, if you're writing Matter Eater Lad or Bouncing Boy, it's pretty clear what you do with them. What do you do with Infectious Lass? Is she supposed to come up and seduce people in order to give them COVID? You see what I mean? And she's supposed to be a hero, not a villain. That's a little, and I think in the same way, I think the Fomorians were how do we handle these? So I don't think the Fomorians ever made it fully into the game the way the mythology portrays them, because the mythology is all about explaining things about our world, and a lot of it is scary. And a lot of the Celtic mythology, and I've discovered this, I had it rammed down my throat and reminded with a baseball bat. And right now, as I work on Fate of the Norn stuff, it's astonishing how many of the Fae tend to be little surly men with red caps on their heads who beat the crap out of you if you don't do what they want or play pranks. And there are all sorts of different ones, from red caps to Nisser to what, there's a whole pile of them. And you'll go, but these are all the same. Well, no, they're not. But they're all describing things that we didn't understand about the real world that are crazy or night terrors or whatever. And I think that's what happened with the Furbolg, because there was, the game has come along, and in later editions, after Doug had written the novels, they're rewriting the Furbolgs every edition, and they're sharpening them up in this direction or that direction, which pulls them further away from the novel description.
What I remember of writing the Furbolgs is I was basically thinking they were like hill giants, which are not super magical or mythical. They're just dumb giants.
Yeah,
so,
dumb giants.
I could see where that might have, I think it's onto something there. I was not really trying to make them. I mean, I was just, they were just, go back to that. They were just dumb giants.
Mm-hmm.
So your idea wasn't to make them more like the Furbolgs, because I know I think that isn't that a classic picture of a furbog in the monster manual where it has that giant holding the spear, the halberd about to attack? You know what I'm talking about? The one from Jeff Easley.
This one right here?
Yeah, that one right there. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you're holding it up. Yeah, that one right there. That's a furbog.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I didn't know that either.
yeah.
Oh, maybe.
It's supposed to be a furbog.
The picture of the insides are much more how I just imagine Doug described them.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking too. That one right there.
And that would be the Fomorian there on the side. In the original 1E, all they did is they were hill giants who had the ability to make themselves small. They had minor magical abilities. So they could magic resistance, they could make themselves human-sized. They could also cast Fool's Gold and Forget. And they basically used those things to trick dumb humans into out of their treasure. At least according to this.
Yeah,
I'm perfectly
I remember they appeared in
satisfied
one
with
of
the
the-
answer that it just could be a regional version. You know,
Sure.
Not all deer look the same everywhere you go. I mean,
Right.
it's
I mean, look, you
it's a
got
matter
reindeer,
of the
you've got regular
environment and the pressures in which they're accustomed to be grown in. That's just how they grew in
Yeah.
Doug's version.
Yeah, no, I could see that. And the other thing, of course, is if they're an island nation,
Yeah.
then in the same way that we look at, say, Madagascar or Australia, and there are variants of critters that are found elsewhere. in the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
the Galapagos.
yeah.
Yeah. No, exactly.
That explains that beer I had the last time.
We mostly have gone with the Fomorians as our big bads, as our boogeyman giants, more than the Furbolg. Especially since 5e let the players play Furbolg.
So the
Oh,
Fomorian, is
okay.
it more the monster in the background that you don't really catch a glimpse of because there's, aren't they? So they're supposed to be hideous, right?
5e made them unseelie fae. So they're giants, but they are from the Fey Dark. And they have the ability to give you the evil eye, and
But they don't have 10 fingers in one hand or 3 eyes.
yeah.
And
Oh yeah, they got that
do?
too.
Oh, okay.
But they'll give you curses.
I don't like that.
For you, and a curse for you.
That's right. And it costs for you, and it costs for you, and it costs for you.
Uh-huh.
Uh,
And that's how they get around, because the other giants are notoriously weak against the will save, against the wisdom save. And so they're
Right.
terrified of the Fomorians coming up and making them, cursing them to be weak, and then they get pushed around by the other giants and not allowed to play reindeer games anymore.
So it's kind of the way we would our regular realms folk would treat the gypsies, right?
I guess.
I mean, like the gypsies were the one where you would have the old lady who gives you a curse. I mean, that kind of gypsy is what I'm talking about.
Yeah, the Fomorians are just outright malicious, and
Right.
I never picked that up from the gypsies or Vistani, if we're going to use the Ravenloft
Right.
parlance for them. They were usually in like Ravenloft. They were people in a bad situation, and Strahd had them under his thumb. Whereas the Fomorians, they just like eating people.
meat's back on the menu, boys. Sigh.
Jeff, you've got a question from Stephen Shend.
Yeah, Stephen Shind. He says hi.
Hi, Steve.
He wants to know if you're happier with how the Moonshades turned out as the Realms material versus if they come out as originally planned with TSR UK. That's how he remembers the whole thing with Dark Walker.
Yeah, that's a tough one. They when Moonshades were coming together, there was a branch of TSR UK, and they had come up with a magic realm called Silverfire, or a magic system called Silverfire, which was not strictly D&D, but it was very Celtic. They wanted to do a series of books, and so actually 3 of their designers came over to the States from England. We put our heads together for a while, and I think we had a really a really cool idea to go forward. One thing that they brought to the table that I ended up using was Kazgaroth, the monster in the first book, and
Right.
I don't know that. I mean, what they were talking about was not pure D&D, but I think it was a really cool story concept, and I have no idea why the partnership between TSR and TSR UK fell apart, but it did, and I ended up using their monster, which I tried to give them credit for that, but that was, as I look back, I kind of feel bad about how that played out, and I don't know how it would have played out, but I do like the fact that the Moonshays is a D&D or an AD&D environment and goes by those rules. So that was I guess I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, I think it does.
Sure. Yeah.
I think it does. And talking about Darkwalker, I got to tell you, whenever I think of the Moonshay, I go back to that first printing of Darkwalker on Moonshay and that cover of that art of her riding the horse, being pulled by the hair of the creature, and he's got his axe out over his head about the hitters are riding side by side.
Yeah, the Blood Rider.
Yes.
That was a Keith Parkinson painting. I love that painting.
Oh man, you didn't get it, did you? the painting.
No. And actually, I have to say, Jim Ward was, as I had mentioned before, my manager and my boss, and also kind of an editor and advisor. He is the Blood Riders. When I first drafted that, they were just like really bad guys. And Jim said, you should really make them magical and corrupt and, evil, magically evil. And I was like, oh, that's a really good idea, Jim. So I took that and ran with it. That's why he's got a skull face, and they do have the magical powers. And so there's an awful lot of people that contributed stuff that went into these stories. And Jim, I don't think he's got a credit in the book. I should have, acknowledged, because that was a really good idea that went in there. I had the Sisters of Sonoria was my own idea for the women elven knights.
Right.
And I thought that was a little ahead of my time, actually, given
They
some
are
of the
still adored today, by the way.
They're still adored today, yeah.
But that the fact that they were fighting the Blood Riders made that really a pretty epic confrontation throughout that novel and future ones.
So who's the woman on the horse? Is that one of the
One of the sisters?
one of the sisters of Sonoria? Okay,
Yes.
it makes sense then. But
Was
yeah,
that Bridget?
I don't remember which.
Oh, okay. Because I just remember Bridget being the main one from the Druid Home trilogy that gets a lot of attention. I mean, you hit a nerve with the sisters, because writing adventures now, whenever the sisters show up, everyone at the table goes, "Ooh." They're like, they want to know more about the sisters because they're just so iconic to the Moonshays. And I try to keep them off stage a lot.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's a really small. There's only like 20 or 30 of them, as I recall. It's not like a cavalry force. It's more like a scouting party. Maybe I'm misremembering that.
No, they were very few.
Yeah,
And they just had to guard a couple passes that had a whole lot of magical wards and misdirection up there as well, to try to keep everybody out of Sonoria.
and they were very elite, like really, really good fighters.
The best.
Yeah,
So when we had them show up, they were basically showing up as the elite force, and also to come in as the commanders who were going to start being the quest givers to the players.
Oh, okay.
And it's like, we know how to fight battles. You do this, you do that, you do that. And that way you could have a large interactive with like 20 tables. And it was the Sister of Sonoria who was handing out the missions. And the players got to handle which missions, but it was the sisters who were coordinating the whole thing.
That's very nice. Yeah.
And then when it was all over, they faded away back up into the mountains.
Cool.
well,
That's interesting.
Your homework, Doug, is to go back and reread your novels. So
I think I'm going to have to. Some of this stuff is lost in the, quarters of my memory, but I do remember the sisters. I thought was one of the coolest things I brought to that series, and I was really enamored of them. I also had a bard that was a pretty good character. I based that bard Tavish on a friend of mine who was a guitar player and a singer and a really nice folksy kind of person. And she read the book and she liked it and everything, but then her nephew read the book and she said, "Is that character based on you?" And so she asked me, she said, "Is that character based on me?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "I didn't think I was so fat."
Yeah.
can't make anybody happy. Come
See,
on.
that's when you very quickly said, "Well, I had to disguise you."
Yeah, oh, geez. And that's about 25 years too late, but that's a good
Sorry.
Oh, that's funny. We also have a question here from George Crashaws. I don't know if you knew George or not.
I've heard the name. I don't.
Well, yeah, he's basically a one of the lore keepers of the realms now, pretty much.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we were talking about him before, right?
Yeah. He had a question about what was it like? Because this is the kind of guy he is. What was it like writing against the cult of the reptile god? You remember writing that?
That was a total guess. That was my first published product in my career.
Really?
Yes. And it was, I mean,
it was like 83, 82, right?
Yeah, it might have come out in 83 because what happened, was kind of a weird situation. I was hired in TSR in January of 82, and there were a number of, Phil Tatarzinski was hired as a game designer. Jeff Grubb and Tracy Hickman all came within the first half of that year. So the game design department was growing exponentially, but TSR was still being run as like a mom and pop business. And so Gary Gygax had to approve any brief, any outline for a module that was going to be published, and he just wasn't getting around to that.
Right.
So he had more and more people coming on staff, but not enough projects for them to work on. And one of them that was out there that had been approved by Gary was originally called the Cult of the Reptile God. It was an N1. It was a novice, like a first, second, third level characters. And I don't know how I ended up with it. It was about the only Gary approved AD&D project that was out there during 1982.
Right.
And they gave it to me, and I really, really wanted to make a good impression. So I did everything I could. And I'm still really proud of that module. I even got some praise on it if this last weekend at GameholeCon. Several of the players, one of them notably said that when she was 8 years old, her dad ran this when she was playing, and she thought it was so awesome. And just things like that. It's really kind of really nice to hear. But I consciously trying to be aware of what you could do with AD&D. The first half is very role play intensive. It's the characters go to a village where there's rumors of a cult, and they have to kind of go around and interview characters and figure out who's in the cult and who's not in the cult. And so there's an awful lot of role playing possibilities. There's not a lot of combat in that first half of that module, but once they figure it out, they learn that the cult is centered in this dungeon that's not too far away. And so the second half of it is just a old school dungeon crawl.
Yeah.
And I'm happy. Like I said, I'm proud of the work, and I think it works out really good that it shows both sides of the game, the role playing and the tactical side. And people seem to have a lot of fun with it and remember it.
Well, I remember it because it was 1983. I was at college, Midwestern State University, and my manager of the store I worked at while I was in college was my dungeon master, and we played that. That was the first time I played a monk, and I was so proud of that monk, and I never made it out of the town. So
Oh, jeez.
I was chasing I was chasing one of the cultists and ran around the corner, and there was a group of them waiting for me, and they cast something on me, and I failed my save. And I asked, well, what happened to my monk? And they said, now he's wearing the robes of the cult. And I'm like,
Oh, jeez.
okay, great.
I was gonna say,
Man.
first half is all RP.
Yeah, that's,
I know.
I remember that convention.
It wasn't all
well.
role playing.
You can get yourself into a heap of trouble in that adventure. 'Cause if you tell the cultists figure out what you know, they come get you.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
And
That's my fond memories myself. So
and so they're back at their port and said, hey guys, we found these adventurers. They're holed up in the inn. We got to plan our attack on them. And so they get reverse dungeon you.